like it was so deep that I stepped into it and it rose over. And
No, it wasn't. Come on.
Oh, there was a trail.
yeah, no, that's
going that way.
And I had to wipe it off underneath the bottom of my. Yeah, that was
That's
real
so
funny.
gross.
Okay. Back again, we got another interview with friends of the show. In this case, it's the Beerists, John Rubio, and Grant.
buddy?
I always forget your last name. What's your last name?
Davis.
Davis, of course.
Yeah, yes, we'll shake hands too.
That's what good friends we are, is that I don't know his last name.
That's right.
So for the uninitiated, tell us about your show.
We are a weekly beer tasting podcast where there are 4 of us usually. Mike and Anastasia are not here today, but we all hang out and make fun of each other and drink and evaluate beer. 5 beers every episode from different craft breweries in the U.S.
One of the things I like about it is that even if you're not into beer, it's still really fun to listen to.
That's one of the things I wanted to do. Like, I'm a big fan of Top Gear, and I'm not into cars at all.
Yep.
But I love watching Top Gear. I love it, and it's just because of the strength of the hosts. You know, I want to see.
Matt LeBlanc is a treasure.
No, not that one. I want the British one with Clarkson and all that, Hammond, and I love those guys, and that's why I keep coming back to the show.
Well, and I think that's one of the recipes, and certainly something we're trying to recreate with the Modern Rogue is genuine chemistry with other people who you know have an affection for, but also a MacGuffin, genuine passion for something, and an attempt to tell the story of what it is. And for you guys on the Beerists, it's very clear. Like you are. I think you don't call yourself an expert, but compared to everyone else, you're an expert, right? And so it's your passion and your education and your story that you get to share that I think is good.
Thanks.
Where did your passion of beer come from? Where did it start?
Well, how about you? Let's hear your story first.
Ever since I went to this place called college, I just loved drinking beer. No, I mean, of the alcohols, I don't really gravitate toward wine or liquor too much. I'm pretty much just a beer person. But I was just drinking what any college kid drinks, kind of the garbage stuff. I started dipping into trying a little bit more stuff, like, I don't know, Fat Tire was coming out.
Sure.
Blue Moon. And I was like, all
Oh,
right,
that's
these
right.
guys these are really
We
good.
got to witness over the last 15 years the explosion of craft breweries. I remember, I want to say it was around 2009, I think I saw Beer Wars, and I never realized that as you walk down the aisle of your grocery store, all of those are owned by exactly 2 companies.
Yep.
But all of that has changed. And nowadays, independent breweries are doing fantastic.
Yeah, there's I think over 6,500
Oh my
craft
God.
breweries now
In the country?
in the country.
Okay.
Yeah, where just a few years ago it was like 1,500.
Now, is it a case where legislation has changed, or a case where just enthusiasm has changed?
Both.
Yeah.
It's a lot of both. Yeah, there are a lot of.
Accessibility as well. Like, a lot of people are figuring out that they can do their own small brewery for a lot more money, and the audience is there.
So I have a question. You gravitate in the pantheon of alcoholic beverages to beer. Is that because, I know for me, I don't like fruits. They're too sweet, too much, whereas I love vegetables. I love that bitter taste or whatever. And I think that's what, especially is, right now there's the big trend of, out hopping each other on the beers. And so that attracts me. Do you have a similar palate?
No, I mean, no, there's not anything in particular that I don't like about beer. In fact, I'm more impressed that beer is so versatile. I think, coming back to when I was in college, I was just drinking that run-of-the-mill Keystone Light or whatever it was, garbage stuff. And then I realized, like, beer can be so much more. And so I started dipping my toe into that. And then, when I met this guy, he was already a big craft beer enthusiast, and you brought me onto the show. I think I kind of entered in as a bit of a novice and learned that beer can be really sour. It can be really thick and syrupy, chocolatey. It can be salty. It can just do all sorts of different things. And
That's one of the different things, one of the things about beer that I really appreciate. A lot of people just think, I don't like beer. And I'm like, well, you probably just haven't found one that you liked.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, when I got into beer, it was because I liked flavors in general. Like, I like eating things. I like drinking things. I like tasting things. Like those.
Whenever somebody dismisses beer, I feel like they're doing the equivalent of saying, like, I tried music once.
Yeah,
not my thing.
I'm not into food.
Yeah,
Like, what do you mean you're not into food? Like, it's such a broad category, and because I was into tasting things, it was weird because I moved from Laredo, Texas, which is on the border, and that has a very particular palate. It's all Tex-Mex and some interior Mexican food, some American classics and fast food and whatever, And once I moved away from the border, I moved to San Marcos, just a few minutes south of Austin.
College town.
Yeah. And that was in about 94, 95. I got my mind blown by all the different flavors I was being exposed to. And some of that came from beer, which I immediately glommed onto, wine, which was another thing that was like mind-blowingly cool to me because I only ever got to taste like 1 or 2 different kinds of shitty wine back home. And not to say that that's all they had, but that's all I was exposed to. And then cigars also I got really into at the time. I ended up really getting into cigars and beer the most, and eventually got just a really big amount of knowledge for both of those things because when I get into something, I want to learn all I can about it, you know, and eventually kind of just roll that into beer full time. So I've been into craft beer or beer aside from the big 3 Miller Bud Coors beers for about, over 20 years now.
So talk me through the moment that you decide that you want to do some kind of presentation about it. And when you decide to create the Beerist, do you, before you even begin, say, look, I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert. I just want to be a clubhouse for enthusiasts who think like me?
Well, yeah, it was more of an enthusiast thing. And I hung out with a lot of fun, very interesting and powerful personalities and people that I drank beer with, and we all discussed. I'm like, we just need to record this because I was always super into podcasts. Since the beginning of the podcast, I listened to a lot of stuff. I listened to you on a podcast way before I even met you.
Oh,
you know?
right on.
Yeah, it was something I had a passion for, just listening to podcasts, and he and I met on another show. And I got to know you more on this show. We met years earlier, but
it's good times.
I thought it'd be fun to do a beer podcast. At the time, there were just a handful of beer shows, and none of them were fun to listen to. They were good on an educational level, but they were kind of dry.
So one of the presentations I do is I couch it as like psychological manipulation or whatever, but I basically do a case study on how Scam School came to be. And there was a book that I read called The Origin of Brands that basically said, just like Darwin proposed a tree of life where you got the reptile branch and whatever, there's a tree of brands, and there's only so much mental real estate that you could grab. And so if you pick a specific enough niche, a specific enough target, especially if it's a soft target that nobody's occupied, or if whatever's there is boring and dry like you guys did, and you're like, okay, somebody has already got a lock on the boring, dry expertise side of beer, whatever. But I bet nobody's done that where Grant drinks from a King's Cup, you know?
Right. Or where it just feels like you're hanging out with your friends and having a fun time.
Right.
You know?
So it's not super clinical where you're sitting there just like really breaking everything down into categories and ranking things and everything. It's really just like you make people feel like they're there in the room with you.
Right. Yeah, and we do get into some geeky stuff on there, but we explain it to people who maybe don't know what, acetaldehyde is, or what these different chemical compounds are.
I know that when I was a guest on there, it was great to know that I had full permission to ask all the idiot questions.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of those things where podcasts are an interesting animal in that most narrative things, most storytelling things, you have to assume that everybody is starting here and catching up. But a podcast, you perpetually have to assume somebody's joining you this very episode.
That's right.
Somebody has these very beginner questions.
You have to limit the in jokes, but also you want to, kind of make all of the insiders happy as well.
Sure.
With those recurring gags.
This is primarily why I was brought, no, maybe not primarily, but this was a big component of why I was brought on, because I didn't have the wealth of knowledge already about craft beer. I wasn't really familiar with the terminology, the different styles even. And so going on there, I was able to just be that kind of voice of the audience.
You played the everyman who came in. Yeah.
I could ask the stupid questions. I could describe that my taste buds were giving me notes of ham or whatever.
Yeah.
I would always say, like,
so
Hand beer is my favorite.
So
Delicacy.
you kind of got the advantage of knowing your role coming into it. Like, I'm going to be the everyman. I can always be dumb or whatever. And over the years, you've gotten more and more educated, and I think that comes through in there. Is there a moment, have you ever had experts on that suddenly you're like, I don't know what my role is because this guy's a genius and I'm just John Rubio? Or...
Well, I mean, it's kind of tough. Once in a while, we'll talk to somebody. We'll talk to somebody who has some knowledge about a gap in my knowledge. You know, so it's not. I don't ever feel any kind of I don't know, intimidation from how much somebody knows.
Sure, sure.
I just kind of want to learn from them more.
Got it.
You know?
So you, I guess it's easy to pivot to the role of student when you're operating at a, we'll say, college or graduate level.
Mm-hmm. You okay?
I'm good.
Cool.
I'm good.
You didn't bring any ham beer, did you? That's fine. Everything's fine.
You look fine.
Yeah, no, I feel good.
Good.
I'm gonna have some bread.
But yeah, I don't ever claim to know everything about beer.
Sure.
Because I don't.
I guess what I'm fishing at is...
But I do know a lot.
What I'm fishing for is like, what is the most impressive guess you've had where you're like, man, this dude knows beer?
Well, I think it was when we interviewed Steve Gonzalez.
This is a beer made with Laurel hops, Mandarino Bavaria hops, and Mosaic hops.
Lovely.
And then Mandarin orange and pineapple. This was actually, I brewed this to be it was going to be a draft-only release, 300 barrels, called Dr. Frankenstone. It was going to come out around Halloween time.
Hold on. Dr. Frankenstone.
Well, we're coming out with another beer called Dr. Frankenstone instead.
Oh, God. Thank you for not getting rid of that name.
Yeah. So the idea was to combine a bunch of different successful concepts into one thing and it be kind of a Frankenstein monster.
Okay, I'm actually thanking them that this is going to be in the rotation and not the other one because I just smell this and this smells like
God.
Everything I love about heaven.
Yeah.
Steve Gonzalez.
Yeah, he's the innovations manager at Stone. He's in charge of making new recipes and researching.
A mad scientist lab of beer.
At Stone Brewery in Escondido, California. And it's one of the bigger craft breweries out there.
Stone is Arrogant Bastard Ale, right?
Yeah. So Steve does a lot of their barrel program where they're taking wild yeast and bacteria and putting it in the barrels and seeing what happens there. And he is so smart and has such a refined palate, and his vocabulary is insane. And we've become fast friends with that guy. He's
a judge at competitions all the time. He's got an amazing palate and a fantastic vocabulary.
One of those golden tongue taste buds thing.
Steve sounds awesome.
Anytime we have him on, I learn so much from that guy.
Yeah.
And we don't do a lot of interviews or guest spots. We try to keep it as a core four hosts.
How much of the story, do you guys have a formula to how you, it took us 8 years or I don't know, I guess 6-7 years of doing a comedy podcast every Tuesday with me and Justin before we finally sat down and said, what about a simple 3-act structure where first act is playing catch up of personal stuff, second act is some bit or game or we do, and third act is all community central focus. Did you guys know your structure going into it, or did you discover it like David in a lump of granite?
Yeah, I kind of had a loose framework for how I wanted to go in the beginning, and we've stuck with that pretty much, but I think a lot of things have kind of emerged over time.
It's been pretty much the exact same. I'd say we would drink 3 beers in the beginning half, 3 beers in the end. We'd give a final assessment. That's always stayed the same. Yeah, there's been a little bit of playing around with how we do an intro before we cut to a break, stuff like that. Maybe less beer on certain episodes. But yeah, the fact that the structure itself has stayed the same has just allowed us to kind of play with the other elements in it. But
yeah, that's one of those things that I tried to work out before we started.
Right.
So that there was some kind of framework, because I'm a graphic designer.
Right.
Full time, that's my gig. And I always find that more creativity happens when you have limits.
Right.
When you have some sort of rigid framework by which you don't cross.
I agree. I think inspiration and originality are aspects of constraints put on you. It's like, yes, of course you can cross the room from here to here, but can you do it dancing the entire way?
Or you'd have to do it 300 times, and the last 10 you have to really entertain me.
Right, exactly. They have to be on your hands upside down. Those are restrictions from which creativity flows. So let's talk about the process of launching a podcast, because in the beginning, the advice I give everybody is just begin. The difference between 0 to anything is the biggest leap, and as fast as you can, make it happen. I liken it to street performing. So did you originally, what did those very early days of just turning on the mic and talking, hi, I like beer, world?
I think my approach is a little different, just because I know that if I get into something, I I'm going to be in it for a long time. And I need to know that I have a solid enough plan in order to devote the next 6 years, 10 years of my time to it. So I wanted to make sure that the idea was good enough, the structure was good enough, so that I could do that and not, nope out in 5 years or in 2 years or whatever.
I definitely operate on the opposite side where I'm a lot more impulsive. I'll just say, if I have a project, I don't want to overthink it. I just want to start doing it.
Right.
Get in there and learn as I go. So I think it's always funny. He has this, I need to have it ready to go right out the gate, the way I want it. And so it has a
to a close approximation. I put a limit on. Okay, let's not go crazy. Let's not go past this thing in my obsession to get it right before I start.
Right.
So that I never start.
Right, you're not paralyzed by
as a freelance graphic designer, you understand the value of compromise. That deadline says whether it's done or not, it needs to be delivered.
Yes, the whole triangle, the fast, cheap,
and easy. Yeah, exactly. No, fast, cheap, and good. That's
fast,
what it is.
Cheap, and good.
Yeah.
Well, you actually spent a lot of time editing all of your episodes. How much time do you spend editing an episode that's how long?
On average, we record about an hour and 40 minutes, and I edit it down to an hour. I clean up all the pauses, a lot of the mouth sounds, because if we're all drinking,
Yep.
it can sound sloppy on the microphone. Double words, stuff like that, I get rid of because I want to maximize your time as a listener. That takes about 12 hours an episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
it takes a long time.
That's one of those, brevity is the soul of wit. Don't waste my time. And what I like about that is that it presupposes that everything being spoken has value, and you need to get rid of all the crap that's not the valuable talking.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll leave that stuff in if we are starting to get drunk and some of those stumbles are funny.
Right.
Then you keep them in. But if
add
they're
to the
just
context, right?
If they just sound sloppy.
Yeah, if they're just obstacles to the point, then you get rid of it.
That also, especially as somebody who's been a guest or whatever, I know that I deeply value knowing that that'll be the case, and that it loosens me up as a guest to explore a different territory, knowing that if something's garbage, then it very likely will not end up there.
Yeah, and it also helps to keep in mind that we're making a show and that we're not just recording our hangout. So
yeah, that can easily derail you, as we well know.
So like you guys, and I don't think I'm off base, pulling the curtain back a little bit.
Sure.
I direct on the fly.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes you'll stop and reset. We do the same thing on the microphone as well.
Well, and I think the end result ends up sounding more polished than quote unquote natural speech would. And on the Modern Rogue channel, we get accused of being scripted, and I was like, what, like a script with a director and key grips, LOL. Right. But we do give ourselves the opportunity to pause, back up, and say it again the next time, and just trim out the fat.
And we also have done this a lot, so speaking clearly, we automatically start doing that when we're in presentation mode.
Sure.
So if you release this uncut, people might still think we have a script because we're speaking clearly.
And plus also, you have a lifetime of anecdotes and stories that have to do with, that reminds me of, Sour Tang reminds me of this. And then all of a sudden you've got this we think of them over at the Wizard Academy as hunks, right? Where it's like, you've got this 3-minute chunk where you talk about where this came from or whatever. You find yourself slipping into that, wrapping it up, putting a button on it, and then moving on to the next thing.
Oh, and there are 4 of us with different experiences in our upbringing, throughout our lives, in our daily lives, different perspectives, different experiences, like that. I've never drank a whole mouthful of, what is that, olive oil?
I didn't either.
Kissing you is like kissing a Johnny Carino.
That has just burned down.
That is currently on fire.
That is currently on fire.
Can I dip some of this French bread on your tongue?
So let's talk about community management. What the experience? One of the things I tell people, anybody who wants to do a creative endeavor on the internet, is remember that the show never stops. And for me, I went through the transformation of thinking like, oh, I want to do a magic show, so I'll just write a magic show and do it. You're like, no. The show begins with the moment I meet someone and tell them about the fact that I have a magic show. Then there's the booking, and then there's the doing the show. Then there's the moment that people come into the theater. You got to have a pre-show to set their expectations. You do the show ends, and then there's the performance where you're signing the autographs. And then there's the performance 2 years later where they're on your email list and you're telling them some story about the show never ends.
And there has to be a consistency there too.
Correct.
Yeah.
You have to have a consistent voice, and you have to also figure out something to keep the content engine going.
That's one of the reasons why one of the biggest pieces of advice to anybody that I give who wants to start a show is be yourself. That's really important. If it's going to be a slightly amplified version of yourself,
right,
cool. Just don't lie to us about who you are.
I think of it in terms of assess your natural gifts and play into those to the maximum amount possible.
Well, I guess that's the difference between selling a product versus selling a personality. Whenever you're doing like a podcast or a show, I hate breathing right now.
You look great.
Your lips are very red.
Some people try to sell their product, like this is a show about beer, or it's a show about a bunch of friends enjoying beer,
right?
And a lot of people invest in Brian and Jason. Some people invest in, well, I'm learning how to do cool stuff, or learning how not to do cool stuff.
Right. Well, and so in the case of swinging into your natural gifts, at some point we figure out, like, I guess it's unusual that we have no problem looking like novices at everything, and infinite tolerance for everybody saying you guys are dumb and you're beginners. It's like, yeah, that's why we're doing the show.
Yeah.
Is like, that's fine. Was there a moment like that you discovered that there was a natural aspect to the voice of the Beerist that you hadn't seen somewhere else, or is it just the community stuff?
I feel like I feel more uncomfortable when someone does try to treat me like an expert on something.
Yeah.
That's where like the imposter syndrome really kicks in for me, because I'm like, I may have 6 years experience like sitting on microphone talking about all of this stuff, really understanding different beer styles more and more, but when I have to start articulating that like I'm the expert, I'm like, no, the sham's here, and I'm being called out for it.
Yeah, I never have a problem saying I don't know about something. You should always be honest about that. Don't try to bullshit somebody about something you don't know.
Yeah.
Because eventually they're gonna find out that you're a sham. Like just say I don't know.
My issue is just that the I don't knows never stop.
So
Blank canvas.
I'm not an expert on anything except for like 90s X-Men comics and pain.
You know what I really like about how bright red your mouth is right now? Is that it really highlights how much the rest of your face looks like silly putty.
So what do you guys do as far as like live interaction, fan meetups, that kind of stuff? Like, is there a regular kind of opportunity that people get to meet you in person, or is that something you guys want to start doing?
Well, every year we've been having these anniversary parties, which are fun. People come in from out of town to hang out with us and to drink with us and celebrate. But
oh, that's right. In fact, I went to the one at Jester King, and then my kid melted down, and I had to leave immediately.
We all melted out there. It was a bad call.
We haven't really done a lot of live stuff. It's just that our audience is so dispersed throughout the country. If we did something in Austin, it would just be hanging out with our friends that we always hang out with in Austin. So
we've actually done this before too. We've tried to do a live show, and then just like random people walking in that like aren't in on it.
Yep. They're like,
threw off the whole thing.
Boy, it's tough. We did that once. So there's times we do Night Attack as a live event show, and then there are times that we've tried it once, just doing it at a bar location. And that moment of hearing so many conversations all around you, and you realizing that you don't own this can be really off-putting. Kind of like your co-host just getting up, walking around in circles in the middle of an interview.
Did you just eat a habanero?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's good, huh?
Oh, no.
But we do notice that like a lot of fans will come in from out of town, and if ever they do, they just want to come on a show.
Well, and that's one of the nice things. Are you able to, because your studio's in your place, right?
It's my house.
Is with your significant other, does that ever get to be a moment where it's just like this parade of people always coming in?
No, it's actually great. Kayla loves hanging out with all the folks that come to visit us in town. And anytime we have a listener say, hey, we're going to be in Austin.
Yeah.
What's good to do? I always offer to go have a drink with them.
Yeah.
You know, because I want to meet the people who like what we make. You know, I want to hang out and share beer with them.
Yeah.
Because that's why I'm even making the show. Like I'm making this because I love this thing so much that I want to share it with people. And if I can do that face to face, I will.
I wonder if the difference is, like, as I have an increasing number of teenage girls, it really makes me aware of who I bring into the house or whatever.
That are your children.
That's true.
I just wanted to clarify that for you.
So I have. I think that in an alternate.
Look how pretty he looks. He looks like a pregnant woman in the face.
Oh.
I'm fine.
Well, you know what? One of those?
That's a lot.
That is a lot. I didn't mean to pour that much.
I'm really impressed. You're running through the whole gauntlet that these guys ran through. Just on the side. Yeah. Is that for me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
So what's next for the Beerist? Where do you guys want to expand into?
I'm trying to grow our YouTube channel.
Yep.
We just started putting stuff on there. And yeah, I just kind of want to make some videos that might be fun for our listeners to watch.
So this is something that I think is that you guys are really well positioned to. Rex over at the Whiskey Tribe, he talks about things in terms of there's inward-facing content and outward-facing content.
Right.
And in general, on the Whiskey Tribe, they very heavily favor playing to their base. Like, hey, you're already in and this is happening or whatever. And then at some point, there'll be an opportunity that organically allows them to make something that's outward-facing. For example, PewDiePie took a moment and talked about Japanese whiskey, and they're like, well, you got some stuff right, some stuff wrong, but we know for a fact that, you know, he has 20 million views on this thing. So they immediately, like the very next day, like, there's a window, let's take it. They're like, what PewDiePie got right and got wrong. And because it naturally dovetailed, it ended up being the very first thing that popped up on there. And for, you know, along with that comes a bunch of, we'll say untrained enthusiasts, you know, like people who are not your crowd suddenly in your house, you know, pooping on the floor and stuff. You're like, hi, we don't do that here. I'm just going to delete this comment and so on.
We got called soy boys the other day. I had to look that up.
Probably because we eat all that soy all the time. And Soycast is trending.
Yeah, I don't even remember what it
Look at
means.
his
I don't really
face,
remember
it's
much
so
of
good.
anything right now.
Oh man, you guys feel that. As you go, I wonder what kind of opportunities there are for more outward-facing stuff that will bring people into your tribe.
Yeah,
I was thinking we could do peppers.
We have done some things.
Yeah, we could act like we're pepper experts and come on the Modern Rogue maybe.
Yeah, on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/thebeerists podcast. We couldn't get anything shorter than that.
Very clever.
You couldn't get the Beerists?
No, I tried, but it was already taken.
Lame.
Yeah. So we did this hottest instant noodle in the world thing, where we bought some of that and ate it on camera, and you had a meltdown.
That was really tasty.
I know. I really like that.
I was having a hard time picking up any flavor because it was just so spicy.
Yeah, it is a bit much for the flavor experience.
Like, I wouldn't eat this on the regular.
Right.
It seems more like a gimmick.
This is something that I would eat if I had the craving for something really hot. But it's not beyond my comfort zone, you know?
I'm getting worried about Grant, you guys.
I'm not. Look at him. He's trucking right through it.
I did.
It was real nice.
Was it worse than what I'm seeing right now?
What did you just eat?
I just had some of that.
Oh yeah, it's hot.
Yeah.
It's really, really not good.
It was. I might.
And it's like,
That was
it
the
tastes
original.
like I got teabagged by the devil.
Like I'm not in pain, but I'm sweating.
That was the original Frosted Flakes slogan. They're really not good.
Who don't?
The fire noodle challenge was really particularly intense. I feel like it was only as hot as like between a jalapeno and
Serrano. Yeah.
but it was a whole bowl of food, and as you're eating it, you're really coating everything up and around the teeth everywhere,
And it intensifies.
And yeah, as that builds, we're like already like, oh, I'm hungry. I want to eat this food. You just keep going with it.
Yep.
it's different than just having a bite of something, spitting it out, or just like, riding that quick wave. It was an ongoing battle, and it just didn't leave the mouth. And everything just started pouring out, got beet red.
It's entertaining to watch.
My ears just popped.
I mean, he
Feels
says
good,
that,
right?
He says that when a guest has a particularly insightful thing to share. He gets very excited.
Yeah.
It's his catchphrase. He has T-shirts. It's kind of embarrassing.
My ears just pop. Confetti.
Pop, pop. Do you guys have like standard advice you give people who are entering the world of beer?
Try everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try it more than once, too.
If you're going to start doing it analytically, try it and take notes.
Discuss it with friends. Drink, like, beer should be communal, I definitely think. And
Yeah.
it should be enjoyed with a lot of other people.
And don't like just look at Untapped and go, that's got a 2. I don't want to try it. Try it anyway. You might really like it.
Yeah.
People have different taste experiences. It's all subjective and can actually change in you over time as well. Like the way I taste something on Monday might not be exactly the way I taste it on the Saturday following that. Depending on mood, what I ate during that day, how I feel, all of those things can change how I sense something.
You really have to have an open mind, otherwise you're just going to be stuck in a rut, right?
Yeah.
And you're missing out on exploring the multitudes of options that you can have. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when we did our beer videos with you guys, because we go in and look at the comments, and there might have been a situation where we were a little bit dismissive of a certain beer because it's something we don't like, and other people just come in at us hot like, hey, I love that beer, you'll know what you're talking about. And to that, we're usually like, cool, I'm glad that you love that beer. We're not trying to disparage that you like that beer, because everything's subjective.
We don't all have to like the same stuff.
We didn't like it. You do. That's awesome.
There might
We're
be
advocates
something
for
that,
beer, regardless.
There
of
might
if you
be
don't
something
like
that we like that you don't like. Like you
Yeah.
know,
We want people to like beer, even if they like garbage shit like that person.
So that is an interesting side effect, is you don't realize as you're talking and you're giving your honest opinion, it's easy to forget how much everything is amplified and how what you said is like, that whole wing I don't like. Then all of a sudden what that person heard is, you're a bad person and you like something that nobody else should like.
right? It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about. This is about my experience. It's not about you. If you want to have your own opinion, that's great. I have mine too.
Let people like what they like.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna yuck your yum or whatever they say in sex.
No one says this. What
It's
kind
never,
of
it's
sex are
never
you having?
happened. It's never happened to me.
I'm gonna start saying it.
I'm just looking at
How you gonna just drop that in the middle? Like, I'm not trying to yuck your yum here.
every time I look at his face, I think of sex.
Don't yuck my yum and tell me it's raining. Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you start off and you just start talking, you want to build an audience. At some point you realize you have an audience and you realize how much time you're putting into stuff, and then you realize, oh wait, this thing we're doing, it costs money. Can we talk about like monetization strategies of what you guys are, because I assume the Beerists isn't a full-time, 40-hour-a-week gig,
It's not.
right?
No,
Yeah.
it's not. I
He
actually
tries to make it that way with his editing process.
yeah, but we get all of our funding through Patreon. Patreon is it's actually been-
Patreon.com/what, the Beerists?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually been really helpful for us because that is the only way that I take money for the show.
Do you accept free beer? Do people?
Yeah. Listeners
Okay.
will send us beer. I don't like ads in the podcasts I listen to. I skip them every time.
Yep.
I wish I didn't have to skip them, so I'm not going to put them in my show so that my listeners don't ever have to skip ads.
Yeah.
If you like what we do, support it. That's it. For the cost of buying us around once a month, you'll be at a Patreon tier that gets you a free glass and stickers and a bunch of like free episodes and a bunch of stuff like the
Well,
episode
and
early.
also, I'm fond of pointing out that you also get the smug superiority of being better than everybody else, and
Yeah.
knowing that at the end of the day, I value your opinion more than anyone else's.
Yeah, look how cool I am. They sent me this glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
I haven't really been paying attention.
You stopped asking questions.
Yeah.
Are you gonna
It's-
magic carpet
I
ride?
got the light head, the dizziness.
Tingling?
I'm there. It's like, I'm just like, riders on the storm. This is bat country.
Oh, we're in a spirit world.
She's my flower.
Travis, I'm in a spirit
I'm a
world.
butterfly.
She's a great big fat person.
Okay, different.
movie.
Sorry, that's what I heard.
Yep, nope.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. You are always welcome. We look forward to having you back on the Modern Rogue.
If we do this again, I want him to eat more peppers.
Did he? Was he? I didn't notice.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Beerists. Get it on your favorite podcast app. Go to youtube.com/
The Beerists podcast.
That's right.
And thebeerists.com is our website. And everything on social media is at The Beerists.
And I'll tell you what, man, hit us up. In fact, I'll toss this out to our patrons because they're our literal bosses. I love the idea of having you guys back, bringing us on a journey outside of beer. So, what would you like the Beerists to teach us about next after hot peppers?
Don't say kissing.
Do you say kissing?
The Modern Rogue learns how to kiss.
Yeah.
Looking at Jason's lips right now, that's all we can think is
They burn so bad.
with passion.
That's why I went and got the Vaseline. I was like, I don't know what to do here.
Because you're like, I make this
But the
look
way
good.
they
Did it
look,
help?
I think it helped a little bit, but it's that's the worst thing.
They look
And,
puffy and juicy now.
the three worst things right now were
look like Kylie Jenner.
the burning lips. The burning lips sucked. The Mad Dog 357 burps were gross. And getting like a coating of Serrano on the upper back of my throat.
That's the worst.
Pretty scary.
Near the nasal passages?
Yeah.
Oh, awful.
Yeah.
Did it end up capping at Serrano and then like you couldn't really notice the other two?
Yeah, it did. I just got to say, the habanero was hot, but it mostly just tasted really bad.
Didn't you just notice that one more on other external
Yeah,
features than
that's
your
when I
mouth?
started feeling like I was just gonna
leaving
levitate
your body.
like I was Dulcim. Like I was just like levitating. Yoga flame.
But that's amazing, knowing
leg
that
did shoot
the habanero is 10 times the amount of capsaicin, and yet somehow doesn't feel. It felt
Yeah.
less.
I mean,
You can try it right now, and I bet it's gonna wreck shit.
You know what? Actually,
Because of that ramp
I'll just
up.
do a little. So,
Jesus.
man, that ramp up I think
No, I'm
is
good.
the real
Good.
discovery of the show. So if I just do with no
I
ramp
took
up,
a full bite of it.
well, I'm going to do it a little bit.
Okay.
'Cause
you earned your wings. That's good.
The tip isn't going to hurt that bad.
Just the tip.
Oh, man. That came out completely wrong. I was looking at his mouth again. Like, seriously, your lips are spectacular.
Do I look like a clown?
They're so glossy and pink. I just want to sleep in them.
It's like a tauntaun opening.
It probably
right
looks
there.
like I have tuberculosis or something.
If I could just trade my bed out for a giant set of them lips.
The Beerists, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll get Kayla to make Murphy lip bed. Just
Yeah, dude.
Hamburger bed, Millennium Falcon bed, Murphy's lips.
She's going to have to make them out of silicone.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks to all of our patrons. Become their patrons too.
Yeah, please. Oh, I got a little chip
25
in my
minutes
throat.
by
Is
my
there,
count. We made it
is there
25
some water
minutes
to
before
wash
everything
the chip
totally
down?
broke down. Yeah.
Water?
Yeah, I got a little chip stuck in my throat.
Oh, would you like some? I think we have Diet Cokes. Let me get you something to drink.
Okay.
What else? What would you like? Oh, would you like
Diet
some
Coke's fine.
Topo Chico? Just put your
Oh,
mouth
yeah,
right
yeah.
on that. That's fine.
I got this, Grant.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.